Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Tim Easton is a confessional storyteller who has lived 1,000 lives in one. Having lived and played in London, Dublin, Paris, Prague, and Madrid, after returning to the States, the singer-songwriter with a vagabond heart moved to New York City and then Los Angeles before making his way to settling down in Nashville, Tennessee. Tim's latest album, Find Your Way, was released this past May on the Oklahoma label, Black Mesa Records. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Tim, can you talk about where you grew up before you started your journey?
Well, I was born on the border in upstate New York. My mom was Canadian, actually. I was born to a family of 7. I was the youngest of 7, right on the border in Lewiston, New York, right near Niagara Falls and Buffalo. And my dad eventually got a job for Goodyear, so they moved us to Akron, Ohio. And then they moved my whole family to Japan, to Tokyo, Japan. So I lived there as a child for like 3 years. And that definitely set into motion this traveling and being a culturally exploratory. That led to coming back to Ohio. I did go to Ohio State for a bit, studied poetry there. I believe I was told early on, from my brothers and my sisters and even my parents, they didn't discourage me, let's put it that way. They said, you go ahead and be a poet, do the things, follow your dreams. So I did that, and I ended up going over to Europe for about 7 years on and off, here and there, getting jobs, sometimes just working on the streets, playing music on the streets, being a street musician, a true busker, vagabond type, lived that life. And therefore, the reason I wanted to do it early on is because I was trying to be a songwriter, but I didn't have much to say. I didn't have a life to report on. And I knew I was a fan of old American folk music and stuff like that. So it made sense to just go the Woody Guthrie route, although it wasn't safe really to hitchhike around the United States. So I went to Europe. That led to the life that I have now.
You talk about being a street musician in Europe. What was that experience like doing that?
Well, in many ways, my mind is still there. I found I still have that busker mentality. When I see certain spots, I still want to do it. So what that life was like was beautiful and romantic and fun and almost like don't get me started kind of thing, because it's when I start thinking about it and how free I was and all that stuff, and before taxes and such, and it came into play in my life when I was just really a vagabond type that was living day to day. It was beautiful, and I still romanticize it, but there were challenges as well. There were challenges. There were times when I slept out, in the park. There were times when I was a true, call them rail riders. We don't call them hobos or homeless people. We call it but I was kind of a hobo for a while, here and there. But I also at times slept in palaces or very nice apartments and very nice places too, because that's what happens when you're a troubadour. Sometimes you get taken care of. Sometimes you're out on the street. It did lead to a life of songwriting. I wonder sometimes about my own ambition, because I do really love that life. Like, that was a beautiful time. Of course, reminiscing about it now, which I've been doing a lot lately with this new record, talking to people. And also I was on a buskers panel. Carrie Baker, the publicist, retired publicist, he lives out in Palm Springs now. He wrote a book about street musicians, and we had a panel about it at the Americana Music Festival. It was very fun. It put me in touch with current and former buskers. And check out Carrie Baker's book.
Oh, okay, cool.
Out on the corner. Anyways, it's Carrie Baker's book about busking.
That's cool. Really cool. I've tried that before. I just did not have the nerve.
You got to have
forcing your will upon the people. There's so many of them today. Today they have PA systems. Like, I was just time to Dublin, Ireland, like Grafton Street, the famous street in Dublin. That's just a famous pedestrian walkway. Like, the European towns have all these pedestrian centers because, they were built before cars were invented. Really strong pedestrian things without lots of traffic. And buskers have taken over in the Charles Bridge in Prague and stuff like that. So you have to remember, I was also a street musician in Prague after the Velvet Revolution. What a time to be there. It was just amazing.
So, wait, forgive me. What's the Velvet Revolution?
Oh, the Velvet Revolution was 1989. The Berlin Wall fell down.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The end of the first Cold War there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Czechoslovakia is now saying, hey, we don't want to be under your Russian rule. And they rebel, and they have what's called the Velvet Revolution, meaning a lot of people didn't die. There were people that were injured, and there were some that perished, but it was a small revolution, and the entire government was gone and changed. And they brought a poet out of prison, Václav Havel, to be the president. And I got there right after that happened. And the Velvet Underground showed up, the band, the original lineup showed up and played a show, and Václav Havel was there. And, I got to kind of be really close to that.
Wow.
Maybe not politically so much because I was a young man just traveling around and playing songs and learning how to play songs and learning how to entertain and learning how to turn tourist money into my beer money, as I've repeated many times. Because, you sit down, if I went to do it now, I'd probably be nervous, just like you stated. But at the time, it's like you have your spot. We call it a pitch. That's the spot. You're lucky no one else is there. You get set up, you turn around, and you start playing. You don't think about it much. You start playing. And there was guys that played, of course, like Beatles and Stone songs and made way more money by Sonny Terry and Brandon McGee or Bob Dylan or, some kind of obscure pop of the day would have been like playing REM or playing like a Ween song or something. Where there was a couple of modern tracks we did. We did some Camper Van Beethoven, I remember. But that would have been like the contemporary alternative music, REM being a big part of that at that time. Not great busking music, though. It's kind of cool to sing Swan, or whatever, some of those acoustic REM songs, but no one really cared. But it felt good to do it. It felt good to do it. It felt good to be like you were doing your own thing. And then I started putting my songs in there. Slowly but surely, I had figured out that singing like the American country blues format, that idiom, helped me connect to a whole other people.
Wow, how neat.
I was just in Dublin and they were like singing, Coldplay and Oasis. It's the same thing has happened now. There's some that are singing Sam Cooke and some old stuff, but mostly it's buskers singing the hits, big hits, slamming hits so that they can pull in. So I could talk about that for the
I love it. It's cool. Who are your musical influences growing up?
Oh, growing up, it would definitely be the Beatles and the Stones. Both those bands, I just would put them on repeat on the vinyl. Like I had a turntable at the end of my bed, right on the other side of my pillow. It was just set up at the headstand was a turntable and two speakers. I had one of those old turntables that had the repeat function on it. I would just put on whatever High Tide and Green Grass or whatever album, just let it play all night long. So I would fall asleep with it seeping into my brain. Those albums had scratches and skips that are still also in my mnemonic memory. That would be it. And then my mom was the one who turned me on to Dylan early on, but I believe I had that rock and roll spirit, like that's the music I loved. And then when you listen to that music, they're like the greatest Americana bands of all time would be the Beatles, the Stones, the Grateful Dead. My sister had some Dead albums too. Those albums, they taught you about old American music, whether you wanted to learn about it or not. You didn't realize that, like the song Money or Chains, these were American hits. The Stones also huge purveyors of old American music. And then the Grateful Dead comes on, they're playing country music and bluegrass and folk and stuff like that. So I think the main country hit the Beatles did was Act Naturally, right? But at the time when you're a little kid, you don't think about Buck Owens. You don't know who Buck Owens is. It's a remarkable thing that can't be stated enough, that how much those bands taught Americans about their own music. And not just my generation, but still continues to do it. And the Grateful Dead, same thing. Like the Grateful Dead, played a Merle Haggard song. I didn't know that. They were playing old folk songs, All Around This World, Dark Hollow, like Dark Holler. Those songs are bluegrass songs. I just listened to the stories and stuff in them, and I didn't realize there was a format, and I didn't realize also that there was a whole scene around the Grateful Dead that was, later going divisive between punks and hippies and such. You don't think about that stuff when you're a kid, so it seeps in, and you learn it and you understand it, and then you therefore. What I tell students today, if I get the chance, is to study the heroes of your heroes, and therefore you go backwards to Chuck Berry, Little Richard, etc., until you're finally back to very basic blues, or someone beating a drum in a cave somewhere.
I do have to say that you answered that on the questionnaire for AmericanaMusic.com, artists you should know.
Oh yeah,
that was what you said about what would you tell other artists, coming up, or younger artists, and that was one of the ones that really stuck with me, and I really, really liked that, the idea of studying your heroes of your heroes, because there's a lineage, like Woody Guthrie to Bob Dylan to Bruce Springsteen, but I thought that was some really good advice. I really liked it.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. I mean, it's pretty easy to find out who John Prine listened to.
Yeah.
He loved Elvis. He loved the Everly Brothers, as did the Beatles. So there's this cross thing that you find out, like, oh, the Everly Brothers, they're important. Maybe I should listen to more than just Wake Up Little Susie, which the Grateful Dead covered, by the way. You find out all your heroes loved this thing called the Louvin Brothers, or Roy Orbison. choice.
Yeah.
It helps if you want to be involved in the making of art. I think it's to study the history of art is the way it goes. Like some poets, some artists wake up and they're just like good to go. And they, but a lot of us need to study. Some people are just born super talented, but it still requires studying. And for me today, it still requires remaining teachable and learning new stuff. And that's why I'm really grateful for certain stations that, like, there's one in Nashville that plays all new music. And it's just remarkable what is happening today, because if you went by the pop thing, you would be maybe deterred. Like I never aspired to be on the pop radio, and maybe that's part of my ambition, my problems in regards to ambition. Not that it wasn't amazing when I was coming up in the late 70s and 80s. It was pretty cool. There was some cool stuff. Mm-hmm. But REM wasn't on the radio, until a certain point. Then they were. But like certain bands, those underground bands, they weren't on the radio. They were like a part of a different thing, and I think that just grew and grew until now you have bands like Wilco who are hugely successful and have their own thing, but they're not anywhere on the radio except for specialty stations that get into it. But radio isn't a part of their story, where it's a part of, say, Taylor Swift's story, for example, or any of the huge pop stars of today. Not that they're not talented or anything. It's just that it just doesn't float my boat the way that some of that underground music did. And I mean, I was really lucky though, like on the radio, if I think back, Cyndi Lauper was on the radio, Prince was on the radio, and that is amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I guess the same could be said about so many things. I just didn't gravitate towards like Wham and Tears for Fears is amazing, but like that music, and I saw some of these bands live, but I started to go more into that alternative thing. It's a weird period, and I think someone needs to write about it. That time when all of a sudden the radio is not whatever's hugely popular is not what bands are aspiring to be. They're kind of trying to do something completely different and then remain underground heroes. But also, as time goes on, you find out how influential they were on all of us.
Yeah, there's definitely something there regarding the underground.
One of those things that it's not so underground anymore. I'm not even sure how we got here. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, just because I have a 14-year-old daughter, and so we trade songs, and it's one of the most enjoyable things in my life is to like, okay, I'll play a couple old songs. Maybe I'm thinking about REM a lot because I played her some like old REM, when you couldn't really understand what Michael Stipe was singing. Then he eventually, you could hear everything, and they were on the radio. And then she'll play something new or something from hip hop or something new from the pop world, and it's nice to crisscross those paths with her as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. She helped you make one of your videos for your song Everything You're Afraid Of.
She did, certainly did, yeah. Basically, the song Everything You're Afraid Of is on my new record, the record that was made in Canada with all these Canadian musicians. And because my mom was Canadian, Leroy Stagger, the producer, wrote a grant proposal to the government. They accepted it. I got to go up there.
Oh, cool.
Really nice way to make it. And for a folk musician like myself to start out with an album being paid for by an entity, the Canadian government. Thank you very much, oh Canada. That's a nice way to start. You don't start in the hole. So Everything You're Afraid Of is me speaking to a friend of mine that is kind of like losing himself on drugs and alcohol and just going away into a dark place where he can't be reached or talked to anymore. And it's like, it's done. He's going to die this way. And so I wrote down what I would say to him if he would listen to me. And I wrote Everything You're Afraid Of. I recorded it with the band. And then when it came time to make a video for that song, I just was like, it's too serious of a song. So we'll make a comical video. And we made a video of me attempting, I'm afraid of golf. Golf kind of gives me it's not that I'm not into it. I'm just not good at it. And it's one of those things of like my family's history and I don't know, just, white guy culture or something, in the post Tiger Woods world or whatever world we're in, it's a thing. People play it and you're outside and you're walking around, whatever. Either you like it or you don't. It doesn't really matter. But I still have like trepidation about that culture, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to make a video and then run it through like a Buster Keaton black and white filter, make it comical, basically.
Yeah.
Like Three Stooges, except it's one Stooge and the Stooge is me attempting golf. And it's just silly. It's just silly stuff. I made a silly video, something fun to look at for a very serious song. And my daughter did film it and I'm very proud of it. Anybody who's listening to us right now, if you ever, please go watch it. I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
It will interrupt your doom scrolling and maybe give you something to think about.
Yeah, it's a really cool song.
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite serious. And I've been singing it every day on the road. And people ask for it. I will say something interesting about that song I've noticed. If I skip a lyric, it doesn't matter. Like I can sing any lyric in any spot in that song and it all works. Or I make up something new. It's really strange. It's a really strange song that's got its own life. Like I've never had a song like quite like that one that I can. The other day, I during the solo, I ended up, I say right before the solo, remove yourself from everything you're afraid of. And then I say, and then play guitar. I say, and play guitar.
Yeah.
Kind of a reference to me using the instrument as a way to meditate or combat fear, which is like just everywhere today. It's all over the place. It's a pretty tense time, let's face it.
Yeah.
You know, in the United States especially. So I ended up going off on this jam. Next thing you know, I'm like playing a Yes song, you know, from one of my brother's record collections. You know, I'm really bizarre, like went way out there. And I found out, you know, that was kind of like the Steve Poltz side of things where you can just branch out into just absolute wackiness and let your mind take you places. So I've noticed that song has got the capability of taking me on a long journey away from the song, and it still doesn't matter. Like the point of the song gets across no matter what I do.
Yeah, that's cool. So you've lived in 3 major music cities, New York, LA, and now you're in Nashville. Tell me a little bit about your experiences in each as a musician.
Well, I went to New York right after I got a publishing deal with Madonna's label Maverick.
Oh.
Speaking of pop stars, yeah. She didn't know what to do with all that money of hers, so she gave some of it to me. Just kidding. She started a company, as you know, will happen with big stars. She started Maverick Music, started a record label and a publishing wing. And I was part of the publishing wing there for a bit. And I lived in New York City. And I have to say, of the 3 cities, that one, I wish I could have a redo just because I didn't really try to participate in what was going on musically. It just wasn't really happening. I don't know why. I mean, yeah, there was a few pockets of things. I mostly stayed to myself, spent a lot of money on rent, distributed a lot of money amongst the bartenders. The Lower East Side. And I did come to Nashville and buy one guitar that I still have that's actually hanging right back there on the wall.
Oh, cool.
That's still here. That guitar's name is Madonna. 1947 Gibson LG2, and it's a beauty. I write most of my songs on it. I play it a lot. And then New York was great, and I went back a bunch, but I also didn't quite, you know, I don't want to let, but like I'm thinking about it, it's like, wow, I spent a lot of time just kind of watching documentaries and going to, you know, whatever, it's fine. I had to learn. You know, because every time you leave the house, it's like expensive. But it's New York City. I'm so lucky that I lived in New York City at a point, you know, and I lived on Carmel in the West Village. Amazing. I met Patti Smith.
Oh, cool.
Crazy. Yeah. And then LA was something, well, I didn't even tell anybody. I just went there. And that was like completely different. I was very social right off the bat. And I got there at the right time to be that. And it was like amazing. Next thing you know, I'm working at Largo and I'm have amazing gigs right away. And I get a record deal and it's just happening for me. I mean, it was like they were handing out record deals at the city gates when I got there. 99. It was nuts. I mean, it was like a perfect time. They were receptive to this, whatever I was doing, this Americana music before it was called Americana, really, you know. But they also had been receptive to that through the whole 60s and 70s with Crosby, Stills, Nash, it's the Byrds, etc. So that kind of was having a nice resurgence when I was there, and I was writing reasonable songs, and I was getting to do fun things, and I got to make a record with some of the guys from Wilco, and I got to do some fun things. That was enjoyable. But then LA itself, I never was really there, so I never really established roots there. I was there for a year, but I never really established roots there either because I was traveling all, and I was going to the desert. And then I moved out to the desert in Joshua Tree, and I lived out there for 7 years, and that was a whole different experience.
Marty Stewart lived there for a while, didn't he?
Pardon?
I think Marty Stewart?
I don't know if Marty Stewart lived there, but he definitely, I mean, we all passed through there because of Graham Parsons and the Stones and the modern stuff that's there now. It's a really happening scene now, but Marty Stewart loves it because he loves, you know, Graham Parsons and that era of the Byrds, of the Stones and stuff. And he, you know, that had a kind of primal influence on him. But, you know, Joshua Tree is just a small village out in the desert, but there's a little scene there, and it was just way different than LA. And then eventually, right after our daughter was born, I was like, we got to get out of here and go back to the city. And we went on a little trip around the country looking for a place, and they were all great, all amazing, opening up to us. But I got to Nashville to play the Americana Music Fest that year, and it was a really good show. Everything was good, and we ended up moving here. I'm not a big part of the scene here either. I mean, people know who I, you know, understand what I do. too, I think. But there's definitely a whole other generations here that I might be aware of who I am. I'm not really part of a big scene. Yeah, I can't go pack out a room in Nashville still. So there's definitely is in a place of like, I'm just a folk musician. You know, I go around and I have little pockets of things I do, but I'm not putting butts in seats here in Nashville. I do okay here, which when you do okay in Nashville, you're kind of able to do okay around the world. You know, it's just the way, you know, so it's a really great place to live for children, great place to raise kids. It's a great place for studios, for recording studios.
Oh, yeah.
More importantly, the technicians and the people that run the recording studios and the people that understand sound, the science of sound and how to make records. And then, you know, you still have a little bit of a punk scene here. Not much, not like other towns really, but there's, you know, people make good records here. They make hit records they make Grammy Award winning records at their houses, you know, here.
Yeah.
A lot of home studios. It's amazing.
I lived there for a little while, about 10 years, and there's just so much going on all at once. I think that's part of why it's hard to pack a house too, is because there's like 20 shows, you know, or 30 or 40 shows going on at once. And then
the expression is, if you want a nice quiet night in Nashville, book yourself a show.
I like that. So wrong, but so funny.
It's self-deprecating and mean, but it's also kind of true. I love when someone invites me to play at their show that they're responsible. That's great.
Because they do all the work.
Trying to book your own record release show here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. That's for sure. And it's a town that's such a high amount of performers.
Yeah.
You know, where I feel like Austin, you kind of got that balance of people going to see shows, you know. You know, in Nashville, it's so many
cooler place all around. Food, people, closer to Mexican culture. Although we have the Latin culture in Nashville has picked up hugely because, I mean, look at our construction scene is exploding. This is a boom town. But Austin's just always going to be a cooler town. It's also a little bit hectic there now. Like with your traffic, and I've noticed like the amount of people running yellow lights or running red lights, and just the way people drive. Mm-hmm. I can barely take it. I can barely deal with it. I got to say, it's probably my least favorite thing in the world is the way that aggressive people drive in this town and your town too. It's like whoa, it's just brutal.
Oklahoma, yeah.
Are you in Austin?
No, I'm not in Austin.
I'm in Tulsa.
Yeah.
You're in Tulsa. Oh well, yeah. That town's amazing.
Well, thank you.
For some reason, I just thought Austin. In Austin,
that's okay.
I mean, no, people. It's true. I think anywhere Americans are, Tulsa the same thing can happen. It's just like the pandemic did not like mellow us out when it comes to like racing cars and stuff.
As an Oklahoman, I do have to say one thing, since we were on the subject of Texas driving, is when you drive into Texas, it always makes me laugh so hard because it says drive friendly. When you drive into their state, and I'm like, really? Like
that whole zone between southern Oklahoma and northern Texas, like that 35, I almost died there just one time, not from driving I was in a car, but just a tornado. And it's brutal. I don't know why, but that corridor it's like a video game of danger. I can just skip having to do that. And I feel sorry for our Texas musicians that have to use that to get out of Texas just to get to Tulsa or wherever they're going to go. You know, they have to like haul ass up there. And it's like, yikes.
Well, luckily, like I-35 goes to Oklahoma City and 75 goes to Tulsa. But I've been on I-35 numerous times and it's no fun.
How Americana is this? We're just already talking about traffic and our anxiety with American culture. Like lately, it's just like, oh
my gosh.
Music helps you in the cars for sure.
Yeah.
You know, Willie's Roadhouse, you know, basic jazz station, whatever, just kind of, I have Sirius XM. So I don't often listen to the station that plays my music, the outlaw country one, but because, you know, you just like, you don't want to be too close to the club you belong to or whatever it is. But I actually love that station, and I love the opportunity to listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage as much as I want and just educate. You know, Tom Petty's station has all those recordings of Tom introducing songs and stuff.
Yeah.
DJ. And I love those educational DJs like Little Steven or Tom Petty that tell you stories about the music.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Tell me a little bit about, on your album, Find Your Way, Can you talk about the story behind Little Brother? It's a really neat song.
Thank you. I have been getting quite a few notes about that. I wrote that song sitting exactly where I am sitting right now. There's on the other side of the laptop here is my backyard, and to be a window and into a beautiful green area with a creek running through it. And I would sit here with my morning coffee and write. And that song, I swear, it just dropped right out of the sky. I really can't explain much about it other than I am the little brother. So I was like, the expression big brother, I was like, well, that all has like a political connotation from 1984, George Orwell.
Yeah.
I can't pinpoint. Oh, I know exactly. The idea of writing a place into your song, that you sing about a place so that then you can maybe go there, or you can sing that song when you're there. The song King of the Road by Roger Miller. He's like, third boxcar, midnight train, destination Bangor, Maine. The word Bangor, Maine, the expression, it's just Bangor, Maine. It just sounds, it's a thing like guacamole. It just is. It's a cool sounding thing, Bangor, Maine. And I was just like, I started there, and up in Bangor, Maine, I drained 1,000 lakes of gin. Yeah. I just wrote that down, and I had no idea that I was going to write a song that was about veterans, of which are dying at a ridiculous rate. So once I did early on realize that this is a story song, and then it was just easy after that. I just wrote it really quickly, sitting right here, and it just became a movie, a short film. I just was like, I'm just going to write a dramatic film in 3 acts or whatever, and it's going to be tragic. It's about 2 brothers, and one of them is a police officer, and he lets him cross it's from the Nebraska album. That definitely would have had influence on me. There's a song by Lucinda Williams called Little Angel, Little Brother. That's actually about her brother. That would have had an influence on me, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. But I know those songs really well, so I can't deny that, that somewhere it's in there. So I just made up a story about 2 brothers that basically take their dad's van that had something to do with ladders. It might have been a construction van or a painting van. Dad's van took the ladders down and wrote a film. It's got a very tragic ending, but that is the reality of what's going on with our veterans today. It's kind of a hard song to sing in a set that's got comedy. I've been bringing everybody together and being entertaining and being funny, and we're laughing and having fun, and then all of a sudden drop that song in there. So I don't do it every night, but people do ask for it a lot. So thank you for asking about it.
Really good song. I really like that one.
Here in this very spot on that guitar right there.
Yeah. What's your guitar's name again?
That's Madonna.
Oh, Madonna. That's right. Because you bought it while you were in New York.
Yeah. I mean, my main guitar is called Paco. That is in the shop right now. That's a guitar that was named by a deadhead in Paris, France, when I was living there for a year. The dead were in town, and a bunch of them stayed at my house. That's my main guitar that I take on the road, but that's my main kind of songwriting guitar.
I have a name for my main guitar, but I haven't named my other ones. I need to name them. But my main guitar is Lucinda.
Yeah, there you go. Lucinda, great name for you. One of the greatest songwriters that ever graced this planet.
For sure.
If that's who you're talking about.
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely.
She taught me the power of a 1-chord song. And
oh, really?
Bluesmen and blueswomen have been doing it forever, but to actually see her do it, because I was able to go on tour with her and learn from her. Like,
oh, you were?
Kind of mentored me just by being herself.
Yeah.
And I know, like the song Joy, it's really she's just playing 1 chord the whole damn time.
Oh, that's only 1 chord? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the other instruments are doing stuff, but she's just wailing on an A minor or something the whole time. It's like da 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 da. It's 1 chord.
Wow.
The blues men and women have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
But I guess I just didn't notice it until I was like face to face with it, with her doing it. Like I was like, the band takes that on a huge journey, but she's just playing 1 chord.
How cool. I want to thank you for your time and talking about your new record, Find Your Way. And everybody go out and check out Tim's record and his song, Everything You're Afraid Of, and that video as well that his daughter made.
And
tell your robot to play it. It's just so easy right now. You just tell whatever robot you're living with to play a song and they will.
Find Your Way by Tim Easton. Here's a short clip to next week's interview with Susie Bacchus.
When I was a kid, and like I said, my siblings were older than me. So the Saturday morning routine at our house was that, you'd get to watch cartoons, or a lot of times it was cowboy shows. And my grandparents moved to California when I turned about 10 or 11, and they moved on to the same desert block with my aunt and uncle, and they all lived on the same block as Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. So basically, my grandparents lived on two corners, and then Roy and Dale had the whole back side of that. And it's a big block, because it's the desert. So my grandma worked at the church with Dale in the auxiliary, and they were real good buds. And so when I went out on the train when I was 12 to visit, I got to go over and meet them. And they couldn't have been more down to earth or just like welcoming. They were just fantastic. In fact, I met them on Tuesday, and on Wednesday they invited me to have dinner with them, and we had TV dinners. No kidding. Yeah, for me as a kid, that was kind of cool that they ate TV dinners like we did at our house,
Yeah.
Then when I got ready, this was my spring break from 6th grade. When I got ready to leave, I realized that I hadn't gotten a picture with them. So right before my mom and I went to the train, I ran over there and I asked Dale if we could please have a picture so I could prove to my friends. So I got a picture of Roy in his rocking chair because he had a broken foot at the time that he'd done on his motorcycle. He couldn't get up to stand up and do a picture with me. But Dale, the funny story is that she literally said to me, well, let me put my wig and my girdle on and I'll come right back out and we'll get a shot. And so I have that picture that, I have both of those pictures, and they've just always been very precious to me.